Paleolithic Age. The Paleolithic Age is the original era of human history. It dates back 2.6 million years and lasted until about 12,000 years ago. During this time, humans were the original outdoor enthusiasts. They lived in small hunting communities that gathered fruits, hunted animals, and spent their regular days trying to survive. Back then, they never had to worry about taxes and rent, but rather more thrilling things like not being eaten or freezing to death. These primitive humans relied on nature and survival skills to live one more day. The smartphones of the Paleolithic Age were tools because they relied on them just as much as we rely on our gadgets today. They crafted sharp tools from anything they could find, including stones, bones, and sticks. They used these tools for hunting animals, building shelters, and everything else they needed to do to survive. In most cases, they roamed from one area to another instead of settling down. Paleolithic life was simply about living off the land and mastering survival. It was the ultimate survival of the fittest era in ancient human history, but life expectancy was approximately only 33 years back then, when pathogens, illnesses, and wild animals were severe threats to survival. Mesolithic Age. Around 10,000 BC, humans started to get fancier with how they handled and crafted their tools. They still relied on stones and bones during this era, but humans figured out how to use better techniques to improve their tools. The Mesolithic Age gave birth to a more organized human society, where more advanced tools made life a bit easier for these primitive people. During this era, humans were less likely to roam around, and were now more interested in building settlements using better and more precise tools. They were still hunter-gatherers who spent their days hunting animals and gathering food. They also started learning more about agriculture in the most primitive ways. They learned how to plant seeds and tend to crops, but their understanding of plants and farming was still at its most basic. The Mesolithic Age in ancient human history was more of a transitional phase, during which humans steadily improved their survival techniques instead of using crude methods. Think of it as the awkward teenage phase of human history, as society was still figuring stuff out on the fly. Neolithic Age. Before this period, people were primarily hunter-gatherers, because they only ate whatever they could find around them. But during the Neolithic Age, between 8,000 to 2000 BC, humans understood that hunting and gathering the land dry was unsustainable in the long run, especially if they wanted to stay in one place. So, settling down on a simpler and more organized lifestyle, humans during this ancient period focused more on farming instead of living life as nomads. They said, hey, maybe it's better to plant our crops and raise livestock. The roots of agriculture can be traced back to this period, as humans realized that watching seeds and chicks turn into food is more manageable than spending an entire day gathering and hunting. With farming as the new lifestyle, humans built villages and communities instead of moving around so much. The foundations of modern human settlements were built on the agricultural practices of Neolithic humans. Communities started to grow larger because the farming lifestyle could now support larger populations. So now that humans didn't have to move so much and spend entire days looking for food, they had more time for hobbies, including poetry and art. Bronze Age. Between 3300 and 1200 BC, humans discovered they could blend different materials to form better ones. They discovered bronze by combining copper and tin, which defined the entire Bronze Age in ancient history. Humans saw that bronze was more durable than any other material, so they started using it for their tools, similar to moving from a bicycle to a car. The gap in durability and performance between primitive tools and bronze tools was so vast that they could now build better communities. The upgrade in lifestyle allowed humans of the Bronze Age to construct stronger structures and bigger buildings. They also established trade routes, and bronze has made farming more efficient. These trade routes act like today's internet because they connect different communities, allowing them to exchange goods and information. However, the Bronze Age also gave birth to more significant conflicts between communities, as bronze could also be used to craft more potent weapons. Iron Age. Around the end of the Bronze Age, humans discovered that certain rocks had a substance called iron, which they could isolate by smelting rocks until the metal melted. The discovery of iron around 1200 BC brought about the Iron Age, as humans became more dependent on this metal. Iron is much stronger and more durable than bronze, allowing humans to upgrade their tools. With iron serving as the base of most tools and materials, human civilizations flourished in the form of bigger cities and more efficient means means of agriculture. At the same time, blacksmiths started turning iron into more potent weapons that advanced human warfare. Conflicts between human settlements were at an all-time high during the Iron Age as people fought for lands and resources, realizing their current territories were insufficient to sustain booming populations. Armed with iron weapons, conflicts such as the Dorian invasion and Greek colonialism occurred during this ancient period. But Asia was also home to similar conflicts, such as China's Warring States period and Assyrian expansion in the Near East. Ancient Near East. While most European settlements were experiencing upgrades in their tools and the rise of cities and kingdoms, Eastern civilizations were also sprouting in places like Mesopotamia and Egypt. Known as the Near East, these civilizations advanced rapidly, giving rise to advanced societies, art, and writing systems that still surprise archaeologists today. During this period in ancient history, civilizations such as ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia already used advanced forms of writing and mathematics that helped improve their societies. They also had some of the earliest forms of government, as independent governments ruled cities in Mesopotamia. However, they were just as advanced in metalworking and agriculture, because these societies used the same knowledge as their European counterparts to craft bronze and iron, tools, and weapons. The rise of these ancient Near East societies established some of the earliest communities in the western portions of modern-day Asia and the northern regions of today's Africa. However, clashes with different civilizations and internal strife led to the decline of many different ancient civilizations. Environmental problems, including unpredictable droughts and flooding in the Nile River, for example, contributed to the fall of ancient Egypt, which eventually weakened and fell under the control of the Greeks at the tail end of this period. Indus Valley Civilization. Found in South Asia in the regions covered by present-day Pakistan and northwest India, the Indus Valley Civilization thrived from the Indus River. It existed for more than 2,000 years, from 3300 to 1300 BC. The cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro were the cornerstones of this advanced civilization, which boasted impressive drainage systems and organized city structures. The people of this civilization were primarily farmers and artisans, but also engaged in commerce with other civilizations, such as Mesopotamia and Egypt. But 600 years before its eventual decline, the Indus Valley Civilization suffered from environmental changes and degradation from unsustainable farming practices. Floods and droughts also disrupted livelihoods, weakening the civilization enough for invasions. The migration of Indo-Aryan speaking peoples from Central Asia was also theorized to have caused cultural problems, leading to internal conflict and destabilization. Toward the end of the civilization's lifespan, Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro declined, as people abandoned the urban centers for reasons that are still unclear. By 1300 BC, the Indus Valley Civilization had fallen, with little to no evidence that outsiders had invaded it. Classical Antiquity. Concepts such as democracy, art, and philosophy have roots that can be traced back to classical antiquity, which is associated with the ancient Greek period. From 800 to 146 BC, the ancient Greeks flourished in city-states like Athens and Sparta, exchanging different ideas and principles. Ancient Greece was like a garden with different city-states acting like flowers, each with different societal contributions. Sparta was known for its athletic and military values, whereas art, culture, academics, and philosophy flourished in Athens. Sparta's King Leonidas famously led 300 Spartan warriors to defend Greece against the Persian invasion in 480 BC. Meanwhile, figures like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle nurtured the seeds of learning in Athens. Classical antiquity also led to numerous advancements in city building and engineering, including the construction of better roads, aqueducts, and bridges. But internal conflicts between city-states acted as weeds that ruined this garden. Sparta and Athens engaged in an armed conflict known as the Peloponnesian War, ultimately weakening the two most prominent Greek cities of that time. Other city-states like Thebes and Macedon rose to power due to the internal conflicts. Alexander the Great ultimately conquered Greece, marking the beginning of the end of this ancient civilization. After Alexander's death, Greece fell under Roman rule, ending the civilization's most significant era. Pre-Columbian civilizations. Before Christopher Columbus made a career out of discovering new lands west of Europe, some civilizations were untouched by the known world during ancient times. These human settlements were chilling on the American continent, not knowing that advanced societies with iron tools and weapons were growing in other parts of the world. But while civilizations like the Aztecs, Mayans, and Incas are often described as primitive and savage societies, they were pretty sophisticated in their own right. During the pre-Columbian era of the ancient world, these civilizations were advanced enough to have their languages, cities, and religions. The Mayans were among the first to create a calendar using their understanding of the celestial bodies. They even caused mass paranoia for thousands of years when their calendar only reached 2012, making modern people think that they predicted the end of the world. The Mayans and Aztecs used their understanding of science and engineering to advance their civilizations and erect massive temples that still stand today. Such temples used to be sites of human sacrifices, practiced by these people to appease their gods. Meanwhile, the Incans were masters of agriculture because they could create entire farmlands on mountain slopes. These civilizations lacked the sophistication and advancements that Europe and Western Asia had in the ancient world. Ancient Rome. Right around the end of the ancient era, ancient Rome rose as the big shot of the ancient world, ruling over most of the known world in Europe for around 1,000 years. Ancient Rome started as a small settlement until the Romans became ambitious enough to build a vast empire by conquering neighboring lands and annexing territories worldwide. Ancient Rome was one of the earliest civilizations to adopt the concept of the Republic, which ultimately became one of the fundamental forms of government in the modern world. But Rome eventually transitioned into an empire, so ambitious that the Roman emperor's influence reached territories in Eastern Asia and Northern Africa. Jesus Christ was born when the Roman Empire occupied present-day Israel. But while the ancient Romans were proud warriors who understood modern warfare concepts, they were also artists. Their advanced understanding of architecture and engineering allowed them to build the Colosseum, the home of epic gladiator fights and chariot races. Rome, however, was too big for its own good, leading to its eventual fall due to internal conflicts and political wars, including the murder of Julius Caesar. During the 5th century AD, Rome fell when it was finally conquered by a Germanic warlord named Odoacer. The fall of the Roman Empire marked the end of the ancient world, leading to more advanced independent countries and kingdoms during the Anno Domini period.